Welcome to Parts Hold.
Here to fill the order.
Today on the show, we are really excited to talk to Andy Irwin, who is a wholesale guru, and he's going to share his 5 keys to running a successful wholesale department. That is not even the best part. We're also going to talk about Cliff's satanic love of cats. We're going to also address his ridiculous mustache. Welcome, everyone, to Parts Hold. Our guest today is he's a client, but he's also a friend. He has one of the best nicknames in all of the automotive industry, and so let's all just say hello to Andy Irwin. How are you doing, Andy?
Doing well, Christian. Thank you.
Yeah, I was going to start by talking about Cliff's disgusting mustache, but I guess I'll ask you first. Like, what do you think of that thing?
That's just not right. I don't understand why the mustache is making a comeback.
And the truth is, Andy, it's not.
I think you would call it majestic.
Okay, I have nicknamed it the scum stash. I feel like that's more appropriate. I also believe that what happened in this case is when Burt Reynolds died, he left Cliff his mustache and Cliff installed it directly.
Smokey and the Bandit was filmed in Georgia. I don't live far from Georgia, and that is actually one of my favorite cars.
Oh, that old Trans Am?
Yes.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. What do you, Andy, just so we can get this out of the way too, what is your favorite pet?
Definitely a dog.
Oh, that's funny.
Friend.
Yeah, my favorite pet is a dog too. Cliff, what's yours?
Well, so an alligator is my favorite, but I like cats. I think cats have a think about it for a second. If you scald a dog, the dog lowers its ears, tails between its legs, it runs and hides. A cat, you have to earn the affection because the dog will come right back to you.
A cat, if it's met it, you will crap in your bed. How is that a pet?
Well, I've never had a cat crap in my bed.
That you know of. I'll leave it at that, right, Andy?
Exactly. I mean, you look at it, and again, you take a dog and a cat, put them in the trunk and drive around for an hour. You open up the trunk, who's happy to see you and who runs away? Dogs are forgiving, they're ever loving, they appreciate everything you do for them, versus a cat. Nope. No, thank you.
To my point, you have to earn the love and affection of the feline.
Yeah, and I've done that same thing, Andy, but usually what I do is I'll put the dog in the trunk and the cat under the hood.
That's a much better place for the cat, I think.
Yeah, it just seems like it's more natural for it. And the noises that come out of there, it sounds like a whiny belt anyways. But I'm really excited about our conversation today, guys. I think that Andy is, we're going to have him tell a story in a second, but we're going to get into the talk of kind of like what I would say the new wholesale. Andy's got a couple of tips on how to really make the best out of that business, and he's got a journey, and I think you'll find, like a lot of you, that he had to learn the parts department the hard way. But Andy, how old were you when you got started in this whole automotive business thing?
17 years old when I started in the auto industry. I had my buddies and we all got our license and decided to buy big 4-wheel drive trucks, and we broke a lot of stuff, and we had no money and no ability to fix them. And luckily, a good friend that was part of that group, he had a family member that owned a little mobile service and repair station, a little corner gas station, and he got tired of our stuff sitting around his parking lot, so he put us all to work. And it's been a long journey since then, but very rewarding one. So it's been a lot of fun, and this industry is a great growing industry, and it can take you very different places, from being a technician in a mobile station to 21 years old, starting to write service at a Cadillac dealer. So went from, a mobile pumping gas on Sunday to wearing a tie on Monday. That was definitely an eye-opening first dealership job, going to a luxury brand. And then I've just kind of stuck through it and worked my way through all the way through the industry. Went and played with ski boats for a little bit through there, but still on the service and repair side. That was my first dive into parts, a one-man show that ran a shop and had to order all the parts and things like that, along with trying to keep everything moving. So
was there any with parts related to motorsports? Was there anything that you've noticed? Because you've had that part of it, and then also on the automotive side, you've had a lot of experience with parts now. Was there anything that was different? Other than I'm assuming they didn't really inventory anything on that motorsport side. Not too much, anyways.
You were really reactive. On the motorsport side of it, it wasn't necessarily so much about turning it out the same day. So as you were going through and ordering, you would, come in, diagnose what you need. And then, as a parts guy, you build the order, everything else. And then it was 3-4 days to get parts. Nothing happened fast. You could do an overnight order, but more than likely you didn't get it. You still got charged for the extra shipping, but it normally was still the 3 to 4 days to get it. And then the other side of it is you didn't have many other outlets to get that part supply, unlike the auto industry where, dealership and factory parts, we fight with the aftermarket world. The ability that they have these big warehouses everywhere, and what do you need to have on hand? And in the motorsports end of it, there's not other places to go. They're very limited.
It's tons of one-off parts too, right?
Correct. Yeah, it's you can't go to your local auto parts store and get things for the marine world too easy.
Yeah, I get it. A lot of going through those catalogs, right? Probably when you were in that motorsports world, like those big thick parts catalogs where you have to almost be able to read another language in order to get through it. But that's what I always think of with motorsports is the catalogs. When
I started in the auto industry, I remember working on microfiche even. So it was wasn't that long ago, but I do very well remember the catalog binders, the 10 different books that were in the one big stand on the counter, and hang on, you're flipping pages and trying to find them all day. So
yeah, that's funny. Speaking of books, so I was laying in bed the other night, and my girlfriend and I were both reading, and then she rolls over and she says, "Can I have a bookmark?" So I broke up with her because after this long, if she doesn't know that my name's Christian, I can't have her around.
I really like that. That's
a good one.
Yeah, I can tell by the silence. It's perfect. But cool. And then how long have you been kind of toying around with the whole, gosh, there's so many questions. I'm trying to pace myself, Andy, but so in general, how much time would you say that you've spent in the parts rooms in the auto dealer world?
First experience really diving into parts in the auto industry was back in 2016. I was just starting with the dealer group I work for. They were in process of buying a new store. We were going through onboarding the existing staff, everything else. And in that store, when we were set to take over, had one person in parts. So of course, we're going to retain the one parts guy. That's our knowledge center. I'm coming in as a service manager. That was what I was hired as. And at 4:00 in the afternoon, the day before we were going to take over, the one parts guy said, "I'm not coming in tomorrow.
I'm out.
I'm gone."
He said, "Hey, guys, notice tomorrow that I will not be here."
So here I am, a little over 12 hours away from an opening with a new dealer group. I'm new to that, all new staff, first time going through a buy sell in that type of management role for me. And I looked at the ownership and I said, what are we going to do? And they said, "Well, it looks like you're now our service and parts manager." Okay. So the next morning, I started in parts. And that was it. And that was an eye-opening experience, to say the least.
You had no real roadmap to follow, right?
None.
when you own it, go in after a buy sell, there's a couple of things that I think about parts rooms on a buy sell. The first is when there's no employees that stay, you have no roadmap and you don't even know what people are getting into. And then the second thing about a parts room in a buy sell, there are always dead bodies buried in the parts room, right?
Yeah.
Like it's always the well, this inventory counts off or this thing's here, but it's not accounted for. But how long does it take you to weed through all that crap?
Few weeks straight of
Yep.
even from an ordering process. I had experienced with the manufacturer, but not from a parts ordering standpoint. Putting parts in stock and setting a bin location was a foreign language to me at that point in time. So you had to learn and move through. I had some great support through some phone calls from our other parts managers in the dealer group that I was now a part of. That were able to do some over the phone and things like that. And then also the dealer I came from, that I had a very good relationship with that parts manager, and they helped me through immensely as I was scrambling to hire a dedicated person for parts. And it was hard because I was also trying to manage the front end of a business, keep technicians happy. And I got a true appreciation of what a parts department actually goes through. So
It's funny, from a service standpoint, we often think that it's just simple and whatever, but from a parts side of it, no one understands the complexity that from the manufacturer standpoint to the different screens that you have to go to the ordering aspect of it, the layout of the inventory, how the inventory is managed, all those things that everybody that looks from a service side looks in and says, that's really simple. It's really not as simple as people think that it is. It's really a lot more complex.
Cliff, when you go into a parts department, do you have a layout preference regardless of brand? Or do you notice that within brands, you almost need a different parts room layout?
As you transfer between brands, I think there is a little difference.
Look at Andy hopping in on your question.
I'm jumping in on this, Cliff.
Yeah. Well,
Sorry, Cliff.
I'm sorry.
You and your cat sit in the background. Continue, Andy. This is great.
I'm sorry, but yeah, there is a difference. It just in how you set it up, because different manufacturers will have different fast moving parts, different layouts. What's important to each store does vary a little bit with manufacturer. So the core of it is pretty simple, where you want your fast moving parts forward and things like that. But there's definitely a difference on what those may or may not be, depending on manufacturer.
And I think it's really kind of all the same. You do want your fast moving your stuff forward. But as far as the layout of the warehouse, where I would keep bigger parts, tires, and those sorts of things, I would say that that's pretty standard. But I would definitely want, your faster moving stuff forward. But so that would be the same. Everything else.
Yeah. So the reason I asked that question to Cliff, Andy, is that I've seen Cliff kind of has like a model of how he would do like his general parts department. And I was guessing that was universal, but I didn't know for sure. But you should take a look at what he does. He's got a really good organization system. I would say it's probably the best way to describe it. It's like ergonomic, right, Cliff? Like your fast mover, of course, in the front. I think that you talked about heavy stuff kind of in the back where it was easy to move around or outside if we needed to. Tires you strategically placed. Like the whole thing was really fascinating. And then your bin organization, I think, was really interesting. And I always think about that. Like, I wouldn't even know how to start, Andy, like going into a place that you would know has no system before. And then like, no one's there to help you. And you're like, oh, by the way, you got to make all this right. Like, I have a lot of respect that you made it through it, but you probably learned a ton of lessons.
A ton of lessons. I learned that parts was easy when the part numbers were short and we just had to worry about 0 through 9. It got difficult for parts guys when they started including the alphabet. That's where parts gets really crazy.
So the topic of our show is about wholesale, and I almost want to call this like this is a new wholesale philosophy. But you've got a couple of really cool things that you're doing. There's definitely, like, I would tell you that kind of my philosophy on it is that wholesale is like a all in or all out kind of thing. And I think that not only all in, all out, but I'm really excited at this list that you came up with of like, I don't know if you call it best practices or it's like 5 new strategies on how to be successful in wholesale. But I'm going to kind of turn, Cliff, is there anything else you can think of to kind of set this up?
No, I think it's and we're going to talk about some of the things that's kind of not necessarily unique, but something that they've done that they've been successful in. And in a couple areas, I'm going to chime in because a lot of the areas that he talks about is something I'm pretty passionate about and using it in your growth aspect of it. But no, I love the way we kind of a new look at wholesale, a fresh experience of wholesale, however we want to word that. But I'm really excited about the list and having the discussion on the list.
All right. Well, I'm going to let Andy, also known as the Hammer, take it away. Maybe we'll talk about the Hammer story on a different episode, but I was thinking about like the tagline of this episode being like keys to the best wholesale with the Hammer. I feel like that might sound and look really good, but Andy, take it away.
It really is. We kind of go through it. Our wholesale operation as a group, we had a very large wholesale operation, but it wasn't profitable. Was the big thing. We were covering a large territory, and really it was a revolving door of having a huge parts amount of inventory tied up, things like that, and just the return was not there. So we made the tough decision back a few months ago and really pulled back on our wholesale to really take a hard focus and look at it and figure out what's really important in the wholesale market. The biggest thing is one of the things is advertising and marketing. As we go through that, it's really not only who is our customer base, which we all know it's the people calling in, the collision links, all the other tools that drive wholesale collision business. But we're seeing that shift in the industry where it's not a little corner body shop anymore. They're large corporation body shop groups that are coming in. So you look at that, where how do we market to them? What's important to them? Is it, and what do they need? And then on top of that, how do we grow that business? If you focus just on those large dealers in those large body shop groups or other large independent repair facilities for mechanical, what about the ones that are right outside your back door? What are the ones, how can you be that provider for those shops that are maybe dealing with a wholesaler that's coming into your territory? So trying to make sure we focus on what's close to your locations and work your way out.
It's interesting that those big conglomerations are coming in and buying up those body shops. And I think that's an interesting aspect of it, and how you market to them and how you advertise to them. I definitely think is key.
Well, yeah, what you're going to do with Gerber is different than what you're going to do with Bob's Collision, right?
For sure.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
But at the end of the day, every one of those body shops has the same goal. Body shop is high production, high turn. That's the business model. They're planning for when those parts will be there, that car getting done, having it get to paint, having it get to assembly, pre-fit, all those things. And if you're delayed in that part shipment at all, and when you've committed to it, it's about speed. It's about getting it to them. And so that's part of the marketing of what can you provide to keep their production schedules rolling, and how you advertise that and how you move forward is key to the success of the growth of your wholesale business. So that's a big thing, and it kind of leads into the next one. But
so I got a question before you go to the next one. Are you doing any outside marketing to wholesale customers on any level, or have you ever done that, or have an experience?
Since we took a step back, of course, when we first started the business, we did do some marketing direct. We took a step backwards, but now we're just coming back into it. In the best marketing that we have right now, we went back to grassroots marketing. Our parts managers are coming out, visiting the stores, telling them about some of the programs that we have available, what access we have for parts, how fast we can get parts from the manufacturers, even if we don't have it are we on a priority list to where we can do it, and how fast we can get it out to them with other aspects. So getting back in making friends is the big thing. We want to build that relationship on a personal level, not just through a computer system, because that's where they go and order their collision link parts and who bids on it and who has it. We want to make it a little more personal, that we're there when there's a problem, that we have that relationship. And so we're really focused on building those relationships with those repair facilities and body shops, that we're just, they know who they are, and there's a face to the name and everything else. So.
How much time are the parts managers spending a week doing that? I love it. It's a dozen donuts and a conversation, basically, right?
You got it. So right now we're trying to get them out 3 days a week in the afternoon.
Okay, great.
So we've really rebuilt our core staff in our parts department. We've added a lot of new counter staff to help maintain the other aspects of the business, because we all talk about dealerships being 5 different businesses under one roof, but you look at a parts department, inside a parts department, there's 3 different businesses there too. You have your wholesale customer, you have your retail walk-in customer, and then you have your service department as a customer.
Yep.
So they juggle more businesses in one department that everybody relies on the success. And I guess you could even add a 4th and say there's the sales department. That is a huge aspect. And to get out and grow your wholesale, if your internal isn't strong, you're just going to fail on every aspect. So we really focused on rebuilding our internal team first, so where we can come back out and we can really dive back into that wholesale market in a much stronger area.
All right. So number 1 was making sure that you're effective with advertising and marketing. That's kind of like the first key. Okay, got it.
Having the proper stock and knowing what to have, what do you need, what should we have, how long does it take to get your orders? A lot of them now for mechanical parts are next day. Certain manufacturers, their collision parts are in a centralized warehouse somewhere in the country. So it might take 2 to 3 days to get those parts. So inventory stock is a huge aspect to meet that demand in turn. In the parts department, we all know we have that wonderful assistant, depending on manufacturer, of ASR or Parts Eye or these things that help us control our inventory. But that isn't 100%. It still takes a strong parts manager to manage what are you seeing for non-stock, and what orders came in and you didn't have on hand, and really coding those aspects to make sure you have the proper things. And then also knowing the vehicle lines. As a parts manager, your more popular models that are on the road, maybe you need to have 10 hoods for that particular model because you might run through them real fast. And knowing that you're at that nice level to where you can really fill those orders quickly in everything to keep everything moving. So looking for that demand of who you're servicing, what units are in operation in the territories you're servicing, who are the other big dealers that are flooding your market with inventory, maybe of your manufacturers or other aspects, to know what parts you should have. If you're a high volume sales store, well, you know what you're putting in, and we already know a lot of those cars, if you don't have your own body shop, aren't coming necessarily back to you, but you want to make sure you're supplying the parts for them.
It's interesting to me because I've been to your stores and I've been in your area, and you said if you need to stock 10 hoods. And again, having been to your area, having driven in your area, I can see where it's probably more beneficial to do 20 to 30 based on the drivers in that area. Just put that out there. I do wonder.
Is that your way of saying that there's bad drivers in the area?
Well, I don't know that I would say that's necessarily bad drivers. The weather has something to do with it in the times that I've been there, which has been the winter. And it's just a different environment.
There's a thing with you and you don't like cold weather, right?
No, not at all. And every time I go to that area, it's snowing. It's miraculous to me that every time I go, it's snowing in sub-zero temperatures, or what I would deem sub-zero temperatures.
Andy, do you think his scum stash is going to keep him warmer or no?
Not at all. I think it might actually land him in a little trouble. And We do also have a little bit of flex in our inventory value. So if we hear that Christian is traveling to our area, we do up our inventory on collision parts a little.
Well, I do collision parts. I would do brakes. I would do anything that's related to gas pedal to the floor, steering components, and probably going to have to do some trim for the passengers.
Trim for the passengers.
Because they're so sick of they break when they hold on that tight. That's pretty good, you two. I'm impressed. That's nice.
Do wonder, Andy, you were kind of talking about the supply and demand, and one of the things that I'm super passionate about from a part standpoint is lost sales. And so I just want real quick, is that a big thing for your managers to focus on, even though they have the ASRs and all those programs from the manufacturer? Is lost sales still of value to your managers?
Oh, yes. We track and record all our lost sales. And even with that ASR or whatever it may be, or parts, you aren't necessarily catching your lost sales. So when you record those, you can now manually override your inventory, pick it up. You have the call, if you're not recording them on the counter and the guys are keeping track of them, you might have 3 calls the same day for the same part, and you'll never pick it up to add it to stock because you may never sell it. Yeah. But now getting it on hand, you're going to be able to turn that a lot quicker. So you can really track that down. Look at those reports weekly, figure out what you're seeing. If you're seeing common part numbers, let's get them in stock. What did we lose there? And even if you are ordering that part, we still will record that as a lost sale because we didn't have it on hand at the time. So, right. Which is kind of a best practice when you're trying to build the business up.
So strategic inventory management is what I would call number 2. Is that pretty close?
Yeah.
Nice. So we're off to number 3.
Can you be profitable with one manufacturer in the wholesale business? One of those coming into it, wholesale costs are pretty large if you want to do it properly. And the expense of drivers, equipment, vans to be able to do it at a pretty big level, like we kind of mentioned, you're either all in or you're all out. So if you're going to make that commitment and you are a single franchise, what's that going to do? Where do your profit margins need to be? Do you got to sit to make that turn to cover those expenses? Multi-franchise and partnership with those manufacturers, majority of them now have some type of wholesale program. And when you look at that, knowing where your programs lie and knowing the benefit of the programs of those manufacturers to really tie in to maximize, whether it be not only the profit coming out of selling the parts, but what is the manufacturer giving you in return? How can you start to cover some of those expenses that way to still keep your margins where they need to be? And you can actually double up on a lot of those programs with multiple franchises. You can spread that between the two. I can go back to a particular manufacturer that we had during COVID. We had very lucrative wholesale rebates, and during COVID, they got rid of them. Things have pretty much turned around now with the car inventory problem. People are keeping vehicles longer, everything there, which means we're doing more repair work, more collision work because cars aren't totaled out as easy. Those manufacturers didn't return the rebates to the dealer. Now they're giving the rebate directly to those independent repair shops for buying factory direct parts. So that loss of income, can you survive with your business without it? Or are you reliant on that program? And making sure that your business is healthy enough if those programs change, because they can change in the blink of an eye, there's no guarantee. Are you still sustainable and profitable? So knowing how many manufacturers are you putting in your trucks every day plays a big factor, along with where is the money actually coming from. If you're relying on your manufacturer to make your profit, you really need to revisit your baseline of your business. You need to make sure you're there without the support of that and make sure you're in a good profit. That should be a supplement to, but not the winning number.
Not the profit strategy.
So I think that there's probably a handful of dealers out there and managers that are listening right now and saying, well, I don't have multiple brands under my dealer group or whatever. I love this because this is something that I did as a parts manager, is just reached out and networked, and we built a system of how we would deliver, where we would meet up, and we were very strategic in the way we set everything up. And there's ways to do that, but I think when you can reach out to other areas or other managers and other manufacturers and car lines, you can build that partnership. I would approach the dealers that don't have your particular brand and are not looking at your particular brand, but maybe adding into their system. For you, maybe that would be a separate brand that you already don't represent. But I think that that's a tremendous way to do it, because you get a lot greater coverage. You build network, you build friendships, and truthfully, there's a thing with your driver bringing their parts and their driver bringing your parts. It builds this great partnership, and you tend to gain business and build business off of that, just by that driver being there. I don't want people to look at it and say, well, I can't do that because I don't have multiple brands for my dealer group.
Yeah, that's a mental block, not a physical block,
Yeah,
right?
that's right.
That's a really good way to look at it. It's funny how often, like, parts managers, just by reaching out and trying to build a relationship, can actually really, really grow their business. But I was thinking about that when you're partnering with another dealership for wholesale, is that you're also splitting some of the costs. Like, it's a really advantageous thing to have a relationship. I've seen that before in places that I've worked as well. I'm glad that you did that, Cliff, because I feel like that's a really smart thing. But yeah, so number 3 is that we want to make sure that we build our wholesale to be profitable, independent of the manufacturers.
So this will be my number 2. It might be your number 4, but it's my number 2. It's good customer service. From when the phone call comes in, orders get filled, to the delivery drivers going out, it's there. And there's going to be the situations where we have errors. The wrong part gets shipped, a order's delayed, there was traffic, and that phone call may come in and that person's upset. And I actually made a little note that says, let's be dogs and not cats. We have to, like Cliff had mentioned, cats, you have to earn that trust back, which we would still have to do. But if you have somebody that maybe calls in and is upset about a situation, if you have your counter guys or your managers or anybody that hold that grudge, versus the next time they call, they treat them like a dog, that they're happy to hear from them again, that they gave you another shot. Be the guy, be the winning guy. Be the guy that's happy to hear from them and see them. And that's really what it's about, is that partnership and that friendship with all these repair facilities. It's what's going to set you apart from the other guy that's just cold and not there. They'd rather call and talk to somebody that they maybe hear back of, how was your vacation? What was your trip?
Oh, that's great.
Those are the things that you want to build, those relationships, not only with, the big body shops of the world, but the little local corner body shop as well. That's important. That's a family run and owned and operated business. That means a lot, that he knows that there's somebody that's also cares about him the way that he relies on you, not only from a part supply, but that relationship building. And the customer service level is something that's always kind of lacked on the part side a little bit. The dealers that do it well, or the groups that do it well, are definitely the ones that are thriving. And it's more and more about that in every aspect of our business, and really important in parts. Nobody wants to deal with the grumpy parts guy at the counter. Nobody wants to deal with them at the phone. Nobody wants to hear parts hold. Everybody wants to hear a conversation. So,
when you talk about growing the business, I'm sure, but both of you, in all the years that y'all spent in the dealership, can pinpoint a delivery driver, whether it be from another dealership or the dealership that you worked at, or an AutoZone, Advance, whatever, those type places. But there's some guys out there that are so personal and such good guys. You really just wanted to order from that place. They may have not had the best price or anything else. You just wanted to order from there because you wanted that guy coming in just because he was entertaining.
Yeah, they're a celebrity when they walk in.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've all seen that person. That's great. It's a good point.
And you can almost name those guys. Like I can think of the guys throughout my career. I had one that worked for me was that way, that took that job very, very seriously and treated it more as a customer experience than that they were just a parts runner. Those guys were so valuable to me.
Yeah,
that's great.
Get your driver's business cards. It's a sense of ownership. Make sure they got a shirt with their name on, and they're dropping off business cards. They're your frontline marketing. They tie right back into some of the other ones that they're there to help you grow the business and, pick up returns or whatever it may be, to be courteous to that operation of that business. They're the ones the stores see more than anyone else.
So, it's great.
That's right. I love it. All right. So we've made it to the top of the list or the bottom of the list, depending on whether or not you have a cat. Andy, what is the number one tip for how to run a successful wholesale business?
Number one, it is something Chris says and everything else that we use. Is parts wholesale a race to the bottom? Is it all about price?
And what's your answer?
No, it's not about price. It's about how everything ties back into it. It's what we offer from a service. If you're out there offering a higher level of service, quicker delivery, being spot on, having more parts inventory and everything else, should you be able to charge more? Or do you need to deep discount your price to compete against the guy that maybe doesn't service the customer as well? That customer that's just solely purchased on or buying on price, they're not a loyal customer. You haven't owned that customer. They're not your customer. They're just another shop out there.
When those guys basically put all the discounts out there and they, as you stated, race to the bottom, it's interesting to me that what you just said, that guy's jumping around from place to place. He's not loyal to that store. If he's in a bind and he needs something really, really quick and that store doesn't have it, he's not waiting for them. He's not positioning himself different. He's calling the next guy. And if they offer it a cheaper price, they've now got his business.
Even if it's a little more. I mean, when you tie into the price, if they need the part to keep the production moving and everything going, it's the other side of the business that when it comes to wholesale, that there's a productive shop on the other end that's relying on your part supply to keep everything moving. It's not the part that's really making their profit. That's our aspect of the service on the other end of it. Is that parts business has to be a service business to the point where we are supplying the inventory to keep them in business. It's not necessarily about price. It's about who's most convenient, who's most responsible, who's most responsive, and who's most reliable to get us the parts that they said they ordered, whose accuracy in our orders are complete. There's follow-up if there's, this day and age, back orders. You have those back order parts and things like it. Who's calling and letting them know what they're doing to try to fill those orders for them. That's the above and beyond moments that will set you apart from everywhere else. And for those services, you don't have to race all the way down to the bottom with the huge discounts and everything else. You can hold your margin because you're going to offer something that nobody else is.
Anytime I'm competing on price, I feel like I've lost. So that's great. And I love this list. So to recap everything, so the top 5 keys to successful wholesale, first is having great advertising and marketing. The second is strategic inventory management. The third is making sure that you are not relying on manufacturer rebates and one manufacturer to run a profitable wholesale business. The second, number 2, is what I call cradle to grave customer service and everything in between. And then finally, the number 1 key to running a successful wholesale business is knowing that it's not all about price. Yeah. So guys, what a great, super informative show. This was a ton of fun. Andy, thank you so much. I left the door open when Cliff and I talked about this. I'd love to have you on again in the future. And there's a couple other things that you guys have working that I think will give you more stories and lessons for the listeners that we can kind of delve into just besides this topic. So thank you so much. Plus, I also love having a tag team partner when it comes to picking on Cliff for his cat and mustache love. And you just fed right in. It was perfect.
I appreciate being here. I love the invite, and anytime. I'm huge part of this group. It's a core of our business and everything in the support. So I love having you and talking with you, Christian. And anytime I can pick on Cliff, I'm there.
That's good stuff. Well, that'll do it today for this episode of Parts Hold.